There were a whole lot of our constituents around the country, specifically in Ohio, and specifically in Pennsylvania, and specifically in the Bible Belt, ironically. A lot of them can't see. I couldn't believe, and I just deterred here for a moment, I'm coming back to the highway. I couldn't believe that Franklin Graham had the audacity to stand up there and pray with the Donald. I know his father. Well, I'm going to leave that alone. But my point is this. Stay with me. Oh, Lord, keep my mind clear. Watch this. As we look at the text with blind Bartimaeus, and he's blind, he's a beggar, and he's by the road, it shows us the plight of poverty, because whenever we can't see our current condition, that causes us to require a hand out with folk who don't want to help out, and it keeps us by the sideline in society. It's being demonstrated right now in the constituency in Ohio and Pennsylvania and the Bible Belt. Because now reality is setting in on what they didn't see when they casted their vote. Now they are repealing Obamacare, and now they're going to realize how much Obama cared.
If you've been searching for something different, time to elevate your spirit, elevate your mindset with Mount Corinth Church. Contemporary, creative, cutting edge with Pastor Allen. Christ-centered, Bible-based, prayer-minded. Experience joy for the journey. Prepare yourself as Pastor Allen challenges you to think bigger. Now, get ready to launch your faith and spirit to another level.
If we were to take a poll on today and ask who would be willing to beg someone for something that you were in search of, I would dare say that many, if not most of us, would declare that I'm not begging anyone for anything, and we would be proud to say it. I want to suggest today that it's a good thing that blind, begging, by the wayside Bartimaeus could not see something. Because there were those in the crowd who were trying to silence him in the midst of his suffering. But yet outside, like begging blind Bartimaeus, who was by the wayside, who happened to be the notorious B.I.G. He was believing in God, and that made him notorious in the crowd. And I don't know about you, but every now and then you ought to be notorious in how others see you when it comes for what you're trying to do in order to get to Jesus. Therefore, I'll side with Bartimaeus on today and suggest with this idiom that I beg to differ. You may not think that it's wise, or you may not think that it's suitable. You may not think that it is of class. You may think that it's too proud to beg, but I declare today, like Bartimaeus, I beg to differ. I beg to differ because I understand how he was as a beggar, and I understand why he begged. Because when you beg on the spiritual level as opposed to the spiritual level, you've got to understand how blind Bartimaeus saw the thought of what it meant to beg. For blind Bartimaeus to beg, if we was to use an acronym, he simply believed in God. And when you believe in God, then you can beg. B-E-G, you then believe expecting God. Oh, yeah. And when you believe expecting God, it can make you a beggar for God, which means you start believing, expecting God's grace, anticipating results. So while he's sitting by the roadside in the midst of a crowd who had contempt for him, he turned into a beggar. He started believing and expecting God's grace, anticipating results, because he believed expecting God would answer. And what I want to do is simply park here parenthetically before we get too far in this passage and just check the house today to find out if there are any other beggars like me. Because I want to declare today that no matter how you feel about it in the crowd, Pastor Allen ain't too proud to beg. And so I want to check my crowd out today to find out who's willing to start begging with me. Because the more you start begging, the more he starts blessing. And the last time I checked, when the begging goes up, the blessings come down. And the reason why some of us are pseudo practitioners of his promises is because we're too proud to proclaim a beg. Can we just stop here parenthetically and for 2 minutes to take a station identification break? Since you just said you was a beggar, why are you sitting there in silence? Is there anybody in the building who needs God to do something for you immediately? Well, you ought to start begging right now. Oh! David said, I'll beg the Lord at all times, and his blessings will come down. I see my beggars. I see my beggars. We're going to get somewhere in a minute. So watch this then. It's significant because verse 46 says, then they came to Jericho, and as he was leaving Jericho with his disciples and a large crowd. I like this. This is why I had us read this and highlight this when we read the scripture, because it's Jesus. They're outside of Jericho. He's with his disciples, and he's with a large crowd. And 46 says, and he was sitting by the road, Bartimaeus. What's interesting is Bartimaeus did not allow the large crowd to affect him. That's significant. Bartimaeus was blind, and he didn't allow the large crowd to affect him. But we just recently witnessed how a man who has sight allowed a large crowd to affect him. Now, Bartimaeus is blind, and that large crowd didn't affect him. But I just saw a man who's got billions, and he's not blind, and he allowed a large crowd on the first day of him being in office to affect him to the degree that he sent out his White House chief of staff, Sean Spicer, to lie to you on television while looking at you through your television screen, and did not blink, and said this was the largest crowd in history. Now, the last time I checked, a picture is worth 1,000 words. He could have said that 1,000 times, and guess what? I still saw the pictures. I'm able to determine the difference between what 2009 looked like versus 2017, no matter if you use 1,000 words, 10,000 words, 1,000,000 words, or 1,000,000,000 words. I understand that the crowd affected you. Maybe the crowd affected him on the first day because of what happened on his inauguration day. Because the crowd on his first day was larger than the crowd on his inauguration day. Oh, y'all don't keep up with television? Y'all don't watch CNN, MSNBC, Fixed News? Couldn't even fix that picture. How you gonna tell me this was the largest in history and we saw who was the largest in history? But this is the history of their history. They're always trying to erase ours. Either the Donald is in denial, or maybe he's just blind. Because crowds don't equal commitment. Crowds can equal contentment. And the crowd on the first day was a crowd of protest. And it was the protest that caused Trump to profess a lie to you. Because he was never really engaged in the process that would have brought about progress. But the crowd that showed up on the first day was a large crowd. In fact, that was the largest crowd I've ever seen in my lifetime, not just in Washington, but Chicago, in LA, up there in New England, even around the world in London and Paris and all other cities. The largest crowds I've ever seen, but my point is they were crowds of protest. Can I just park here parenthetically? That's why you can never get excited about the size of any crowd. You got a lot of folk who are always talking about the crowds they got. Well, let's just ask, what are they there for? Because you can have a large crowd, but if they don't even know why they're there, why are you claiming them to be in your crowd? Y'all ain't ready for the truth, but the truth shall set you free. So my point is, on the large crowd that assembled for the protest, they would not have had to assemble after he's become president with a large crowd of protest if they had been assembling themselves through the process. Had they been around for the process, they would not have had to protest. They just could have professed by going to the ballot box. But the problem is most folk don't want to go through the process. They just always want to profess with a protest that prohibits their own progress. Because you can protest from this day, for the next day, for the next year, for the next 2 years, for the third year and the fourth year, and as long as you protest every day, you're going to wake up on the last day of the fourth year, and guess what? He's still your president. And my brothers and sisters, the same is true in the church. It's amazing how we can show up with crowds of protest, but where were you during the process? Because you don't want to go through the process. You just want to hear you make a profess, although you ain't trying to get with the same progress. That's why it's better to have a smaller crowd who's committed than a larger crowd who don't even know why they came. As we exegetically examine and hermeneutically hunt and theologically think our way through the tremendous tension trapped in the text, look at verse 46, because it's the first point I see in the text, which is the reason why Bartimaeus wasn't too, afraid to beg and proud to beg, and which is the reason why Pastor Allen ain't too proud to beg. Number one, verse 46, ain't too proud to beg because of the plight, P-L-I-G-H-T, of poverty. The plight of poverty. Keep your Bibles open because Pastor Allen is always Bible-based, Christ-centered, and prayer-minded. Then they came to Jericho, and as he was leaving Jericho with his disciples and this large crowd, a blind beggar named Bartimaeus was sitting by the road. Watch this. This is the plight of poverty. He's blind, number one. He's a beggar, number two. He's by the road, number three. He wasn't even on the road. He was by the road. And my brothers and sisters, that's what poverty does to us. Poverty keeps us on the sidelines of society, where we have to become beggars asking for handouts from those who don't even want to help out. And it's all because we were blind and didn't see what we thought or wished we could see because we couldn't see it at the time. Stay with me, I'm going somewhere. The reason why I know this is true, that you can be by the road and not on the road, you can be a beggar because of your blindness, and that's a plight of poverty, is because that's what we're seeing right now. There are a whole lot of our constituents around the country, specifically in Ohio, and specifically in Pennsylvania, and specifically in the Bible Belt, ironically. A lot of them can't see. I couldn't believe, and I just deterred here for a moment, I'm coming back to the highway. I couldn't believe that Franklin Graham had the audacity to stand up there and pray with the Donald. I know his father. Well, I'm going to leave that alone. But my point is this. Stay with me. Oh, Lord, keep my mind clear. Watch this. As we look at the text with blind Bartimaeus, and he's blind, he's a beggar, and he's by the road, it shows us the plight of poverty, because whenever we can't see our current condition, that causes us to require a hand out with folk who don't want to help out, and it keeps us by the sideline in society. It's being demonstrated right now in the constituency in Ohio and Pennsylvania and the Bible Belt. Because now reality is setting in on what they didn't see when they casted their vote. Now they are repealing Obamacare, and now they're going to realize how much Obama cared. I'm trying to help somebody in the building. Because now they're looking at all the cabinet appointments of people who have no governmental history, no governmental background, and he booked it all with his billionaire buddies. They're on the road. They're not on the side of the road. So these folk in these states who are now going to be even more silenced on the sideline of society, going to end up begging for benefits that are now being repealed from them, are going to realize just how blind they were for voting for somebody who didn't have an interest in them. Now trump that if you can. This is the situation right here in the text, because blind Bartimaeus is blind, he can't see, and there's a large crowd that's trying to block him from his blessing. But the problem is, the text says he's sitting by the road. Is anybody walking with me? When we're dealing with an unemployment rate of 4.7 nationally, but 7.9 in the black community, God, that's the plight of poverty. When we're dealing with an uninsured of 10% nationally, but 12% in our community, that is the plight of poverty. When we're dealing with a high rate of teen pregnancy, when we're dealing with a high rate of those who aren't graduating in our community, that sets them off for a course for a plight of poverty. And that's where Bartimaeus is. He's been sitting by the side of the road with a plight of poverty, and nobody in the crowd even cares. Stay with me, because we don't just see the plight of poverty in verse 46. Look at verses 47 and 48. He wasn't too proud to beg, not only because of the plight of his poverty, but then he wasn't too proud to beg because of the productivity in his persistency. Stay with me. Keep your Bibles open. Look at verse 47. When he heard that it was Jesus, the Nazarene, he began to cry out and say, Jesus, Son of David, clue, have mercy on me. I'm talking about the productivity of persistency. In 48, he then elevates to many who were sternly telling him to be quiet, but he kept crying all the more, "Son of David, have mercy on me." Notice the progression, because we're talking about the productivity of persistency. Look at the text. In 46, at the end of the verse, he's sitting, come on, Bible readers, by the road. In 47, he began. Now, if he's beginning something, that means he wasn't previously doing it. So if he began to cry out, that shows us in 46 that not only was he sitting on the sideline, he was sitting silently. I'm painting a picture on the sideline. He's in the midst of a large crowd. He's sitting silently on the sideline in 46, but then he began to speak in 47. So he moved from sitting silently on the sideline in 46, watch this, to speaking publicly with a pickup line in 47. The pickup line was Jesus. "Son of David, have mercy on me. Pick me up because these other people in the crowd are putting me down. And the other people in the crowd keep putting me down, and I can't get off the ground, but I got a pickup line, so I'm going to open my mouth when I heard you were coming by." Somebody said that's the productivity of persistency. See, he was sitting silently by the sideline. He wasn't saying nothing to them, and they wasn't saying nothing to him. And I'm trying to help somebody. When you're dealing with poverty, folk gonna not only walk by in today's age, y'all know how y'all do, y'all drive by and don't even look. And don't even have no tint on your front window. And they knocking right. You at the light. You wait until they honk their horn behind you, you know the light turned. And they're sitting on the sideline. Look at the text. He's sitting on the sideline silently. 47, he's speaking publicly with a pickup line. "Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me." They create even more opposition in 48 by sternly telling him to be quiet. So now look at the productivity of persistency. He moves from being sitting silently on the sideline to speaking publicly, "Lord have mercy," with a pickup line, to now in 48 shouting passionately over the main line. The main line is the large crowd that's trying to block his blessing. But he's smart enough to know if Jesus is passing by, I've got to get his attention before he walks by, because if he walks by, I don't know when I'm going to get another chance again. So I can't keep sitting on the sidelines being silent, and when I tried to start speaking publicly with a pickup line, they even tried to block me more. So now I got to be so persistent with my productivity that I've got to go from being silent, from speaking, to now shouting. So 48 says, he cried out all the more, "Son of David, have mercy on me." And I got to stop here parenthetically and bless somebody in the building. If you're in a situation where you're suffering right now and he hasn't answered you, it might be because you've been spending your time sitting on the sideline silently. And if you say, "But I came to church and I opened up my mouth publicly and I asked for a pickup line," you may have left it on the line. Come on, y'all don't want to be real? You come to church, you're going through a situation, you're going through a stress, strain, or struggle, and you come to church and open up your mouth, and if he doesn't answer you and bless you at that moment, "Well, see, I told y'all, ain't nothing to this thing." and miss out on what God has for me. Why? Because there's no productivity with persistency. And I'm trying to help somebody in the building. If you want a real miracle in your life, if you want a real blessing in your life, you've got to elevate with a productivity of persistency that goes even above the main line of the crowd that's trying to stop. Oh, y'all don't understand what I'm saying. Because, see, the person sitting next to you may not be blind like you in your particular burden that you have. But if you're not careful, you will allow them the way they're looking at you right now, like, I wish they'd just be calm right now. I really didn't come to church to sit by the person who's going to be clapping their hands, opening up I didn't come for that. But if you want a miracle like blind Bartimaeus, you got to look beyond the crowd that's around you and go over their main line with your pickup line, because you've been tired of sitting on the side. Oh! Have I got any big believers in the building who ain't too proud to beg? Forget about who's sitting next to you. If you want God to bless you beyond belief, I dare you to stop sitting on the sideline. I dare you. Don't worry about being public with your proclamation, with a pickup line. If you really are in need, I dare you to start shouting over the main line. Oh! I dare you to start crying out even louder. Oh! I dare you to open up your mouth and shout. Shout until he changes your condition. Shout until he changes your circumstance. Shout until he gives you a confirmation. And before you get the confirmation, let's have a celebration right now. Oh! Shout! Knock your neighbor out the way. Shout! Why? Because Jesus is in the house.
Hello, Houston. This is Pastor Allen, and this is my beautiful wife, Deidre. And we want to invite you out to one of our electrifying services at 8 a.m. or 10 a.m. each and every Sunday. We're establishing ministry on an electrifying level. We're contemporary, creative, and cutting-edge church. Also, log on to our website at www.mountcorinth.com for more information.
We hope to see you soon.
You've been watching Mount Corinth Church with Pastor Allen. We hope that you've enjoyed the message today. Make sure you come out and join us for one of our electrifying services at 8 or 10 a.m. 4901 Providence Street in Houston, Texas. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Mount Corinth or log on to mountcorinth.com. Tune in next time as we continue to find more joy for the journey.